right now, AI agents have a goal which we give them, and then they try to achieve that goal. And certainly the neuromorphic ones, the neural networks, deep believe, deep learn, we may see the answer and love the answer, but we lose the provenance of how did we get to the answer. It gets lost in the complexity of those methods, right? So now you have, imagine an autonomous car that's been given the objective of driving safely, obeying the law, and getting to the destination. And there is a certainty that in the next 4 milliseconds, I'm going to hit the car on the left or the car on the right. And I have to make a decision. I have to modify my goal and break all those rules and hit that car or that car. And I have to let that algorithm that's driving that car make that decision, because 4 milliseconds isn't enough for a human driver to intervene. We're going to have to wrestle with those problems. We're going to have to write algorithms that can rewrite their objectives. And that's a really scary world. I don't know if I love that.
You know, I'm a little...
Especially when they're flying drones, you know, or things like that.
Yeah, I'm a little more sanguine about that situation. I think what will end up happening is the autonomous agents will have to explain themselves, either before the fact or after the fact. Now, it's going to be a little more scary when it's after the fact.
Especially if they destroy themselves.
Yeah, because, you know, well, then it's like the black box recorders. You're going to have solutions that come up that are like that. But I think while we focus on the self-driving cars and those examples, the bigger examples are actually going to be in the realm of human endeavor, in terms of keeping up with the data, in terms of establishing context, and using these agents in a way to augment that intelligence. I think that's where the explanatory aspect is going to become really critical. You can't have the agent without it being able to explain what it's presenting back to the person.
So you're using language very, very carefully, and I agree 100% with what you just said very precisely. What others might say, less precise speakers might say something like, as these AI agents learn things, we need to be able to understand what they're learning. And there's an element of anthropomorphizing these algorithms and methods. They're not learning anything. They're ingesting, they're organizing, they're connecting in ways that we've sort of arranged for them, and maybe ways that they arrange for themselves. But there is still an element of humanity in what we do with our neural networks that we're, I think, happily for me at least, a ways away from. That does leave open the possibility that they do colossally stupid things really efficiently, right? And you know, technology can accelerate the speed with which you hit the wall, right? So
yes.
I think we still have to be a little humble about allowing goal modification, for example. I think maybe within reason.
Yes.
I think it's okay, but I think we have to be really careful. And I don't think we will, by the way. I think we will fail gloriously a few times before we slow down a little on it.
I agree with you. I think, though, this notion of these systems being able to explain themselves, you know, the market forces will drive that, if nothing else.
Or the legal forces.
Or the legal forces, yes. And I think that's where this is eventually going to come to fruition. There will be some areas like self-driving cars, you know, algorithmic trading and so forth, where you have to make those decisions in split seconds, and there's really no place for a human decision maker. But in all the other places, I think it's going to become much more, you know, doctors, surgeons, so on and so forth. That's going to be just much more of an augment situation. And to your point, I mean, the question I would raise there is, does it really matter how these systems do it? Whether they're actually learning or curating and so forth. So I'll use the example of a neural network, right? So neural network, if you use it to predict something, that's one problem. That's one kind of problem. If you use it to predict and explain something, you know, whatever it's predicting, to actually explain that, it's a much harder problem. But essentially, you can still use that same approach to solve it and to approach that much more challenging problem the same way, in the sense that you could just think of it as having more outputs for that neural network. It's a much harder problem because there are more outputs. But, you know, and now you could still argue, well, is that network actually learning, you know, what it's predicting, even if it's able to explain it? Or is it just that, yeah, you've got these two different segments of the network, and that's responding in a way to the input stimuli and producing it? But if it's getting the answer right, and you're able to then act on that as a decision maker, then, you know, I mean, it raises open that possibility. Right? Does it really matter?
Yeah, a curmudgeon would say that you just said the end justifies the means. And I know you didn't say that, because at the end, you let the human agent make the decision. So what you basically let the AI agent do was give you the best possible advice, which then you're free to accept or reject with your human brain. I think we are too quick to let our devices make decisions for us, and we're lazy. And at some point, we're going to get to the point where we take that human out of the loop of some of these
things
decisions.
we will,
And
yeah,
you know,
like you pointed out.
some people will argue, look, we're talking about something where if you wait for the human agent to make the decision, the guy dies. I get it. I don't think it's black and white. I also think that some of these scenarios will involve things that are less dispositive in the end, where we don't know that the outcome was the best.